can I trust you that your tax cuts will really benefit me? Or will they disproportionately benefit the wealthy? Will the gap continue to widen? What's up, everybody? It's your boy StephenMotivate back again with another political talk. As you know, the famous Jay-Z song, "Politics as Usual." You know, it's not always about money. It's not always about trying to make as much as you possibly can and reach all your goals. There are things that are happening in society that are also equally as important, economically, socially, government-wise. What are the policies that are out there, right? When we look at politics, we're always focused on the people. What did she do? What did he do? What did they do? But what about the actual policies that these folks are meant to represent, and what it means not just for you, but also for the broader republic or the broader community, nation as a whole? We have been going through the Republican platform because you have the opportunity to vote Republican. You can vote Republican, you can vote Democrat, or you can vote independent. Two-party system is what has dominated our government and our politics for a long time. So typically, if you're not voting Democrat or Republican, then you're voting independent, it's almost like you're not really participating a bit, because the likelihood that an independent would win is just very low. But it's still important for me to help folks understand, with this platform that we're building, with this platform that we have, we want to understand what we're actually voting for, what we're actually supporting. And so we've been going through the Republican platform to do just that, to try to understand what's going on. I am a bit biased because I'm not Republican, meaning I don't agree with all of their policies. And so when I talk about them, I'm trying to talk about them from a fair, unbiased standpoint, an intellectual standpoint. What's the logic behind this? Does this make sense? And but unfortunately, if you don't feel like something makes sense, it tends to bleed out when you talk. So we're going to try to be unbiased as much as possible, but whether you're Republican or not, and we're going to have some Republicans on the show. We've had Republicans on the show. If you watch some of our other content, and we'll get into that. But hey, if we're talking about StephenMotivate, please like, subscribe, follow, comment, tell us what you think about this information, and if it's helpful to you. We'd love to hear your feedback and your thoughts on this. So we are now on, I believe, Chapter 3 of the Republican policy. Chapter 3 is, let's see here, right? And so we're talking about, they're talking about building the greatest economy in history. Very exciting. Greatest economy in history. They're committed to American workers. You see that in the first line here. They believe American workers are the most productive, talented, and innovative on the entire earth. The only thing holding them back is suffocating policies of the Democrat Party. Their America First economic agenda rests on 5 pillars. They're going to slash regulations, get those regulations out of the way, cutting taxes. They're going to secure fair trade deals, and they're going to ensure reliable and abundant low-cost energy, and championing innovation. Together, we will restore economic prosperity and opportunity for all Americans. All right, so that's what they plan to do. So let's dive into these one by one. So cut regulations. So they say here that a lot of regulations stifle jobs, freedom, and innovation. And as a business person, I agree with that in some sense. It can be very too much red tape when it comes to business can mess things up, get in the way of efficiency, get in the way of free trade, because I'm an entrepreneur, at least part of the time. And I believe that as an entrepreneur, there's a lot I can get done if people don't get in my way. And so the government at times can get in the way. While at a basic, foundational, logical standpoint, that is certainly true, right? It's like it's obvious. If you do something, what's a good example here? Like governments run parks, but you go to Disney's park and it's a whole lot different. So that's a good contrast of wow, when the government does it, it's like this, but if you let private business do it, it's like that. Most of us would say, would you rather go to your public park or would you want to go to Disneyland park? And Disneyland's is in many cases much better, but you have to pay for Disneyland's and the government's park is free. But that's a nice, easy contrast, right? Of saying, yeah, when the government does stuff, it's probably not as good as if you let private business do it. So as an entrepreneur, that's it's kind of like the logic a lot of entrepreneurs deal with. And this is why a lot of Republicans tend to really relate or have an affinity or what do I want to say? They align well with Republican policy, because if you're a businessman, if you're an entrepreneur and you want to just get stuff done, then yeah, why not? Let's just push through. We don't need any regulation. I don't need anybody slowing me down. And I agree with that in part, right? I hope no one cuts up this video because if you just take it at that level, then yeah, that makes sense. Let Disneyland run the parks, not the government, right? And I made that example for a reason. But imagine a park where there's no regulations, right? Imagine a park where any height can get on the ride, right? Imagine a park where you don't have to fill out the forms and do the extra checks to make sure that the ride functions properly, right? You've seen these carnivals that, if you've grown up the way I grew up, there was a carnival that would come through town in the summer, right? And they'd come and they'd set up shop, and last week it was just a empty parking lot, that maybe an old Kmart, and with the next week you drive on, it's like, oh, it's a whole little carnival. Oh, this is cool. Let's go experience that. But you've also heard horror stories about some of that equipment not working, or people getting stuck on rides and people's life becoming in danger, because while an entrepreneur is motivated to, hey, give people something they like and let's go make a nice little experience for folks, as entrepreneurs, we're not as motivated to check everything and dot every I and cross every T, and let's make sure every bolt is still tightened. So this balance between regulation and entrepreneurship is a dance, right? It's not always clear cut. So when the Republicans say they want to cut regulations, it's like, okay, yeah, that sounds good, but do we trust? Do we trust that if we just let people do what's best for them, that folks would really care for, be concerned about what the Bible calls the least of these, right? Who's thinking about the guy that doesn't have any money? Who's thinking about the homeless guy, right? And there's this sort of, entrepreneurial mantra of, oh, everyone should just pull themselves up by their bootstraps. But what if you don't have any boots? And what if the boots don't have straps, right? And so there's this kind of thinking that we're all starting at the same level. We live in America, and you can get anything. It's the land of opportunity, and it is. But yet and still, it is true that not everyone starts at the same level, even today in 2024. It is still true. And so when you talk about just cutting regulations, the critique of this is that, okay, well, how many regulations are you going to cut? This just sort of blanket, let's cut regulations. Yeah, it sounds good to a business guy in one sense, but if you turn the tables on it, are we still going to be safe? Are we still going to be taking care of the elderly, the homeless, the people that are poor and are, or are we just, let's go get the money, let's figure it out, let's just roll the dice and let's run this carnival as many times as we can until it breaks. And yeah, we'll lose a few people when it breaks, but we certainly help more people than we lost because more people had a good time than, and we'll fix it after it breaks, and, we'll pay the family off with some money. So it's like that's an extreme example, but Republican policy, we're reading their platform, at its core is saying, let's cut regulation because it's stifling things. It's slowing things down. And while that could sound like a good thing, because in many cases the government is not as efficient, it could also, on the opposite side, be a very horrific thing if we don't know exactly what regulations are you planning on cutting, and so that's a substratum level of Republican policy. It's like, yeah, we're going to make the economy the best in the world because we'll cut regulation. But again, what regulation are you cutting? So let's look at number 2, make Trump tax cuts permanent and no tax on tips. I did hear something recently on this, the no tax on tips. I guess the workers union or the waitresses or hospitality union, they're not supporting Trump, even though it would seem like, hey, no tax on tips is a cool thing. We won't dive into that, but the Trump tax cuts. So many people would argue that Trump did wonderful for the economy. And if you remember, things were pretty good economically when he was in office. Now, I don't know. I haven't done enough research. I'm pretty sure, though, that Obama was in for 8 years, right? 2 terms. He came into a horrific situation, stabilized it. Whether you like him or not, he stabilized the economy. And then, so I don't know that, I don't believe, and I have to go back to their 2016 platform, but I don't believe that no one would ever say that Trump took over a failing economy. So did he maintain it? Did he keep it going in the right direction? Yeah. And in some cases, probably yes. And does that come from some tax cuts? Yes, probably did. Why? Because if I'm a business person and I'm doing things in the world and I'm hiring people, and if you give me more freedom, if you give me less regulation, it can help me make more money. But I think the critique here is this, and when we talk about cutting regulation, it's like, well, what got cut and who does this benefit? And I think the critique that many Democrats will have about Republican policy is that, yeah, your tax cuts were put in place, but they disproportionately benefited the rich and the wealthy. You got a guy in Trump, President Trump, that is a businessman. Many would argue a failed businessman, but he's been able to work the system enough to keep activity going and, be registered as a billionaire, at least with all of his assets and stuff. So you got a guy who probably doesn't like regulation a lot, probably doesn't like taxes a lot, and wants to, benefit the boys that are on top. And then many black folks especially remember, oh, I got these checks in the mail during the pandemic. I got these checks in the mail, and so Trump gave me money. And that's, what folks think. But when you talk about disproportionate, benefit, if the Republicans have $1 million to give out and they give you 1,000, and let's say you don't make 1,000 a month, as you get 1,000 from, it's like, oh, I like these Republicans. But if they take the other 999,000 and give it to the rich who are already rich, that's where the critique comes in. It's like, can I trust you that your tax cuts will really benefit me? Or will they disproportionately benefit the wealthy? Will the gap continue to widen? right? And so this is the critique. People wonder how, as an entrepreneur, would you not be supportive of Republican policy, right? You want things free. And it's because I don't come from money and I don't come from wealth. And to think that that gap will continue to just widen, it's been decades to try to claw back. I'm right now, I'm standing on the shoulders of Dr. Martin Luther King, other legislators and policies, union policies, democratic policies, affirmative action, making sure folks have access to schooling. And so you see me now as an entrepreneur and think, well, why would he? Because I realized that this didn't just happen. My dad, my mom didn't have the opportunity to work a good job and be an entrepreneur and have access to all these things that we now have. And so when you hear people talking about we're going to give more to the wealthy, we're going to cut more regulations, what that says to me is you're going to continue to widen that gap between the haves and the have-nots, and that middle class continues to get squeezed out. And yeah, I see a pathway for me to be on the have side, but what about everyone else? And so when you think about, like, there are economists, right? Famous economic theory folks, Adam Smith, which many people, if you've ever went to school and you studied economics, you know that the free hand, free trade, not letting, the less government, the better, right? That's what we all believe and know that there is, based on these theories, that tends to be more efficient, free trade. So we know that that's a strong theory that, most all economists believe in, supply, demand, all that. But if you just let things run wild, you don't get the amount of blacks that have now been to school and graduated, and the amount of education and opportunity, people getting hired, and so you see these things happening where it's getting clawed back. Why do we need diversity, equity, and inclusion? You see these groups getting fired. You can go on Google and look up diversity, equity, and inclusion, staffing being taken away or positions being taken away from these corporate companies. And all of that diversity, I am literally, who you are looking at, I literally am a beneficiary of being put in places because of diversity, because of equity and inclusion. Let's make sure we have some young black students going to Purdue University, right? Let's make sure that even the job that I got that brought me to North Carolina, I've found that job at the National Black MBA Conference. And so I would have never known about the opportunity. They would have never known about me. They would have never had my resume. I didn't even know the steps to take because I don't come from that. But when you recognize that there is a group of people that, and it's not the mindset thing. And a lot of people get upset because they say, democratic policies have kind of given this victim handout mentality to people, and it's hurt the black mindset. And while some of that is true, I don't think you can blame it on, at least not 100%, on democratic policies. I think the mindset people have has a lot to do with, their environment, things they deal with, etc. So it's not all just policies. And there are books out there where folks, you can argue that, people say that a lot of black people, a lot of poor people, a lot of whatever want handouts. People that are on food stamps and all this stuff, and the facts actually show that the government has allocated more money for food stamps, welfare, all that sort of stuff, and a large percentage of that doesn't even get used because people won't apply for it, or even though they may be eligible. So either they have so much pride that they're actually not trying to get a handout, or they just don't know about it. Either way, that's a whole myth in and of itself that people just want handouts. But some of the idea that there's a victim mentality with people, okay, some of that is true. However, the policies may not be the only reason for that. And even still, the point I'm making is that when you look at policies that don't help people, don't help level the playing field for folks, then you literally don't have the society that we have today. When you talk about fair and reciprocal trade deals, you know that Trump was very big on getting screwed over, and we gotta put tariffs on people, and he did, and that sounded good. But some of those tariffs from China were massive, and I think I talked about this in a previous episode, but it created changes in our economy and in the way and the price of things as it relates to inflation, that now we're dealing with that. If most of our goods come from China and we're playing hardball with them and we say, yeah, everything's going to have a higher tariff, then we still need the stuff, right? We still need it. And so what happens, it comes over here, and now we're paying a higher price for it because there's now a tariff on it. And so, yeah, he did a lot of trade deals, and the Republicans, this is their front runner. This is who they've supported, but it may have caused more harm than good, right? We're being tough on people, but the price of almost everything is up through the roof. And you just wonder how, if you impose a tax, right, which is basically what a tariff is, it's a tax, then it creates issues, and it creates some uncertainty, and prices have gone up. So I don't know how much I trust the Republicans as it relates to the fair trade deals thing. I don't know that it's. I think people could also critique that, and I don't know how much better it's been for us as it relates to that. The topic on reliable and low-cost energy, this is a big one because Democrats are known for caring about the environment and being kooky, as they would say, about, things have got to be climate change and da-da-da-da-da. And I don't know. I feel like the climate's changing a little bit. I feel like winter, starts in April sometimes. Like, what the heck is going on? And so I feel like it's changing. So I think, being environmentally friendly is kind of important. But Republicans would have us believe that that's a bunch of baloney, and we're, wasting time, money, energy, trying to solve for something that hasn't yet happened. In the short term, it sounds like, yeah, if we have low cost energy, that makes sense. If we can power our houses with gas, oil, things that aren't clean energy, and we know for a fact causes climate issues, but if we have access to them, let's use them. And that's basically what they're saying here. And I don't necessarily agree with that. The next bullet point, number 5, says championing, the word I'm having trouble saying, innovation. So if we're championing innovation, why are we so dead set on going back to oil, gas, all this dangerous stuff? right? And if you live where we live in Charlotte, North Carolina, there's a huge nuclear power plant, which is a very dangerous way to power stuff. If that thing blows up, it's over. Yeah, hopefully that doesn't happen. But if you ever watched the movie on HBO Chernobyl, where a nuclear power plant in Russia exploded, it's a great documentary on HBO. I'd recommend it to anyone. It's amazing. I don't know if it's a documentary, but it's like a short series. It's just amazing to see what happens when you don't think about the future. You think about right now, right? And that's what I feel like this low cost. If you've seen this, you could Google this too. Drill, baby, drill, right? And there's another good movie I was just told about not too long ago. It's called There Will Be Blood. And in this movie, you see the oil industry at its very early stages. But the title is so interesting because this guy gets rich and all this wealth, but it comes at a high cost. And that's why the the title is what it is. There will be blood. You think about mining, the oil fields, coal. Have you ever watched any documentaries on what that does to people's health? You know? And so if we can find a way to make a wind turbine generate clean energy for us, why stay stuck in the past? Why not do what, my kids may benefit from? Or do we just say, oh, we know about that, but uh, eh, who cares? I prefer for us not to do what we were doing 100 years ago to generate power. If we can do it better, why not do it better? So this is their plan on the economy, right? And this is their third platform. So if you are Republican and you believe, yeah, we should have less government, I don't need to know the details of what regulations they're going to slash. I just trust that they'll slash them. If you are rich and you want tax cuts, then yeah, it would behoove you to vote Republican. But I'd also question: do you only care about yourself, or is there any planet in which you care about others as well? And if you know that you're already rich, and let me become more rich by give me more tax cuts, right? And I will say this: I like the tax cut idea. Here could be a good policy, right? And I don't. Right now, our world and our leaders are so diabolically opposed to each other. I don't think good discourse, good discussion is even happening. But I like the idea that if corporations would sign up to make sure that the poor, the in their communities, that the things that governments do, right? They make sure there's housing for the poor. They make sure there's food for the poor. They give unemployment checks to people if they lose their job, right? All these things to help people that need help, frankly. If corporations could figure out a way to, in the communities they serve, solve these problems, then yeah, let's tax them less because let's let them figure it out. But they've got to come with a plan to actually, in any community they're in, this is what we do to make sure people don't need food stamps, don't need housing, don't need da da da. And if it could have a material impact, then I say, okay, give them more money if they're going to use it the right way and do something altruistic, do something that's going to benefit people. But you can't just give them tax cuts and then they just, pay out another dividend to their shareholders or buy back stocks and just do financial engineering to make everyone more and more wealthy and to just widen the gap. And that's why I wonder, yeah, you might want to do that if you're rich, but what about everyone else? And I think people, a lot of times my dad used to say this, we think about our four and no more, right? People are so myopic in their thinking. Just as long as my family's good, that's all I care about. Um, and some would argue that the Adam Smith theory, the economist, the invisible hand, do what's best for you. That is what makes the economy work, right? And so you got those two opposing thoughts, right? Should I just do everything for me? Should I just care about my four and no more? Or should I care about others? And I hope for a government. I hope for leaders that would try to think through how to do both or have a balance. Yeah, in some cases on a day-to-day basis, you do need to focus on helping yourself before you can help others, right? I heard Jalen Rose talking about this. This is what they tell you when you get on the plane, right? Get your mask on first before you help others. And we've heard that if you've ever traveled by airplane. And so, yes, you should help yourself before you can truly help others. But I fear that we have people in place that some of these policies are, I'm going to help myself and I'm going to keep helping myself and I'm going to help myself some more and I'm going to help myself a little bit more than that and I'm going to help myself to even more. And when are you going to help the person beside you that couldn't get their mask down, that there was a malfunction there? And we get so disconnected from it. Now, in real life, if we're all on a plane together, all that changes in a snap. No one's thinking about your money. You're going to try to help that next person. It is a human natural instinct to try to help somebody. You have to actually resist from helping people. At least that's the way I'm set up. I think most of us are set up that way. But when it's so far removed from us and we think, oh, just give me some more tax cuts and let me be richer so I can take care of my four and no more, then we tend to lose that human side of us. And when I see somebody say, hey, we're going to build the greatest economy that America's ever seen, okay, but at what cost? What are we going to give up in our future to do that, to drill, baby, drill? What are we going to give up in protecting our elderly, our homeless, our most vulnerable? And I think that's too much to pay. I don't want the greatest economy. I don't want to be the richest guy if I got to step on all the smallest guys to be the richest guy. Politics are important. Look, stick with us. Come back next time. We look forward to talking more politics as usual. All right, it's your boy, StephenMotivate. Stay motivated. Peace.